This episode of Q Point Podcast is pre-recorded, produced and sponsored by Karina Quirk, broker at Next Home Experience.
Different views.
I know your story.
From different cues.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Karina Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
Q Point.
Joining us now in studio is Republican candidate for state representative of District 64, Shawn Packard. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we appreciate it.
So tell us, how did you get involved with politics in Maine?
I guess it started early on. I entered foster care at 12 years old, and they tried to give me a guardian ad litem during court processing, and I didn't really want that. I wanted to be able to tell my own story. I knew that the only way that it would come across accurately and also from a personal level, it was me to tell it. So I went to court, stood across from my parents, and told all the testimony at 12. And then I got strewn about in the foster care system, different homes. By the end, at 18, I'd gone through 12 different homes. But throughout that process and through the different trials that I went through, I was in a place called Hilltop Home in Vassalboro, which was a sex trafficking ring. And I ended up speaking out, trying to get awareness brought to this place to get it shut down. And other kids had done the same thing, but DHHS didn't investigate. So I went up the flagpole, and I actually went directly to Mary Mayhew and Jim of OCFS, and I got a conversation with Paula Page, and pretty much he shut it down instantly, among others. He took my word, and not only that, he investigated further into other open cases. So that was kind of my first inkling to politics in general. Working with Paula Page, we ended up furthering our relationship and trying to work on the Reunification Act. As you enter care, there are two things that happen. One being that each child is diagnosed with something. Typically, it's a minor diagnosis of something like PTSD, but it could be a major diagnosis too, requiring lots of counseling, requiring medications, things you don't really need. We work together to try to eliminate that reunification because not every child needs it. If you enter care, you shouldn't be placed back with your parents immediately. There should be a due process that happens to make sure that they have changed whatever it may have been that got you into care in the first place. For me, it was abuse, and for many others, that's typically what happens, whether it be neglect or physical abuse. And a lot of times, and far too many times, we see the kids go right back immediately, and then the cycle starts over again. Doesn't matter how many times the cycle starts over again. DHHS deems that their number one priority is to reunify parents with their kids. And while that may be a good reality, it doesn't work for every child. So our idea was to, at the age of 12, have the child decide whether they feel like they should stay in foster care with their foster parents or respite or whatever they may be in, could be a kinship program, or go back with their biological parents. So we were working very hard to complete that. Through that process, I gained more notoriety and traction about advocating for foster youth across the state. So I joined this program called YLAT, Youth Leadership Advocacy Team. And it was to essentially help the system and the kids in it to be able to have a voice. So through that program, I was able to help write the Foster Youth Bill of Rights. So I went down to Washington, D.C. when I turned 16 and helped form that bill, which got passed. And it basically allows kids to have that voice. So say you get a diagnosis that you don't agree with as a child, you can speak up and have more due process in that. So maybe you are on medication that you feel like is inhibiting you from doing something or harming you. I've talked with many kids in the system who have gained excessive weight from medications that they don't need. They've had psychosis that they didn't have prior, night terrors, whatever it may be. It's partly because of unwarranted medications. And personally, where does that stem from? It comes from the state wanting money. Each child enters care. If they're given a diagnosis, then they're given medication, then they're given a counselor, then they're given a case manager, a caseworker. So each kid is appointed your caseworker, but then there's also a case manager. So all these add up to have a supply of costs going to the state. And most of it comes from subsidies or main care or whatever it may be, but somebody's paying for it, and it's typically a taxpayer. And a lot of people were concerned during that time of like, well, foster parents are just in it for the money. When the reality is the people who are taking the foster care kids in, they're not in it for the money. And it's a thankless job, and there needs to be more of them. When I was in foster care in the heat of it, there were 2,500 kids across the entire state of Maine and only 1,400 homes that were registered as foster homes. So there is a overwhelming demand for foster parents. And I'd even say that specifically for teens, because as the older kids get, the foster parents are typically older generation homes and they're looking for babies. But the disregarded kids are the ones that are most in need, and they're typically older. So they get bounced around, they get put in respite homes, they get placed in shelters, and then their education level goes down, their depression goes up. And I've seen it where kids get placed in places like Job Corps up in Lebanon, Maine, and other places like teen centers. They're not live-in facilities, but they become live-in facilities for these foster youth who are troubled. Now, not every foster youth is troubled either, or not every youth is even on the road to being troubled, but we just have to be there and support them and figure out what their needs are. There's plenty of systematic options to help get these kids on the road to recovery or help or whatever it may be. I think a lot of people are like, there's not enough resources, but there are. It's just we have to connect them. The people who look out the most for these kids are your police officers, your teachers, your churches. And far too many times we see that DHHS fights against those systems and they say, well, you don't know what's best for these kids. Well, they do. And partly because they're on the front line. DHHS tries to be at the front line, but how often do cases get reported and then not investigated? So yeah, they'd love to be on the front line, but the system doesn't work that way. So we have people that are willing to advocate for these kids and help them, but we have a system that prevents them. So that's what kind of got me all started. Obviously, I ended up working with Bill Diamond, the late Bill Diamond, with Walk a Mile in Our Shoes, and he uncovered that more than 150 kids have died under state custody. And that number keeps going up. And then when you try to bring it up to our current governor, it's disregarded. That isn't happening. Yeah, it is. And you have the power to fix it. If Paul LePage was still governor, he'd be fixing that. He was fixing it. And obviously his time came to an end. But I believe wholeheartedly that number, it wouldn't just decrease, it just wouldn't be added to. Because that number never goes down. Those kids have died. And that's the piece that everybody's like, well, as long as we work towards decreasing that number. No, the number shouldn't exist. There should be none. But that number now is in concrete. When we go to a memorial for veterans, those people have died. And we memorialize them because their life mattered. And these kids' lives mattered. They were children. And we have to work towards a system that this never happens again. Not that we diminish the number, that it never happens again.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Karina Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk. We are having a conversation with Republican candidate for Maine State Representative of District 64, Shawn Packard.
Karina and I have talked to a lot of the candidates, and they all agree that's a problem. They've all said that should be separated. Being involved in it, what is your solution?
So as somebody who's obviously lived the system and then even worked for the system to be able to advocate for it, I have a pretty simple solution. There's many parts to it, but I think in conjunction, it creates a true definition, a standard of practice, if you will, for the system. And as a business owner and only working in management my whole life, that's something we need to take into account, is that we need a standard operating procedure, and then we need to hold them accountable to it. So for me personally, I have to start with the people who directly call to action these instances when, as a mandated reporter, essentially, you report to DHHS that there is something going on. Well, it starts there. So I would create an online system through Maine.gov where people can enter in that they have something going on, rather than calling a hotline, rather than trying to anonymously call in and get a hold of somebody. There's an online portal. Everybody knows how to work all these online portals. It's going to be very simple. You would have a login. Every mandated reporter in the state would have a login to be able to access it. You put in the information, and then it creates a ticket. And the only evidence that you get that says that we've acknowledged it and that we've looked into it, actually, there would be a box and it would get a check mark. And for you, that's your follow-up. If it has a check mark, then that means that somebody has investigated. And that's all you need for reassurance. So that's, again, where it starts, because I've talked to too many police officers who report, and it's still 6 months before they have heard that anything has gotten done. And even police officers don't get an update. DHHS doesn't say, well, yeah, we've investigated. I think that check mark is where it all starts, so we can hold them accountable now. We can now say, well, it has a check mark, but I just went back there for a follow-up, and there's still abuse happening. Has anybody done anything? So now we can hold them accountable to it and actually say, this says it was investigated, but it wasn't. That starts there. Let's go a step further. We all know, we've all been told, that CPS workers and case managers are tired of the management not listening to them. The fact that they have overwhelming caseloads of too many kids and they can't handle it. They're burnt out. They also know that they're the frontline workers who know most about the kids, where the management doesn't. That's just the bureaucracy that goes on there. I feel we need to eliminate the management that's there that has no compassion for these kids, put the CPS workers and case managers in that management role, and have them work towards hiring new CPS and case managers because they already know what it's like to work boots on the ground in these homes, and they know what's best to advocate for these children. So it starts with the ground up rather than eliminating the top or eliminating everyone. There are very hard workers in DHHS that truly do care about the kids. And if we just eliminate everybody or flip the house, as many of the candidates talk about, it doesn't work. We have to start with square one. And what does that look like? We have to reteach everything to everyone. And that's not ideal. We do have good workers. We just have to empower the bad ones or remove them. So that's part of it. We have to create that new standard operating procedure, though, because somebody in Aroostook County is going to be doing something entirely different than Cumberland County or Kennebec County. We have to create a standard for the state of Maine that says, if you don't meet this standard of care, then you're gone. Because it's not about you or it's not about your county. It's about the kids. And there should be a standard operating procedure for nearly everything. That doesn't mean that you're taking each scenario the same way. The scenarios are different. But how you treat the kids, showing up with a trash bag to take their clothes, not ideal. That should not be a standard of care for anyone across the state. And certain counties or certain areas do it and some places don't. I believe we shouldn't do it at all. Simple little things add up to be something absolutely massive. I and many other foster kids across the state have had that trash bag filled with our stuff, and we're strewn off to the next place. And I still know kids to this day that have their trash bag still because it's a memory to them. The fact that at one time, everything they owned got thrown into a trash bag from a DHHS worker, which just shouldn't even be reality. We should have some more compassion. And as a human, we should have more caring ability than following some arbitrary standard that we feel like we've set for our region. So I believe that that's part of it. And we work towards a future, essentially, where we can now hold them accountable. As many of the candidates who are trying to advocate for a better DHHS system have talked about, there should be a system where when we hold them accountable, it goes up the flagpole quite instantly too. We don't want to feel like we're hanging on to these things as low-hanging fruit. These are kids in the state. They should go directly to the governor's office or to the commissioner of DHHS and say, hey, this is a situation that's bad. Let's investigate it immediately. We also need more communication. How do you take care of all these issues? Well, maybe it shouldn't be a DHHS worker going to a domestic assault incident. We should have the police involved. Why is it that we have to wait to have police involved just because they're a minor? I don't believe we should. We should be working in conjunction with our local police officers. We should be working in conjunction with our community resource officers, with our EMTs. We should be able to have wellness checks just like we do for mental health patients. We should be able to go there with community and compassion and understanding and say, let's figure out what's really going on here. That's step one, taking care of the child. The flip side is now we have to have a support system and have those resources that we already have that exists across the state of Maine. We have to connect them all and work together in conjunction with DHHS to provide help for the family. Because the family model has gone away, not just here in Maine, but as a society. The nuclear family, as you will, is gone. So whether you have two dads, a mom and a dad, or two moms, whatever it is, doesn't matter for these kids. They just need a family, somebody who's there to take care of them. And if the issues are more about the societal problems than taking care of the child, then that family shouldn't really be worrying about those things and the child shouldn't be there. The family has one job. And if they have a child, it's to take care of the child, raise them, and teach them right from wrong. It's pretty simple. They say that there isn't a manual for kids when they come out, but the manual has been there since the beginning of time. And we just have to instill it. It's been taught to us. We have to teach right from wrong. We have to try to pass on our skills and knowledge so that they can have a successful life, a future. That comes from education. It also comes from the family. And if we don't start holding things accountable in that regard, then of course you have kids that become delinquents or issues going forward where they end up in foster care. And that's saying that not every case is that the child enters foster care because of the parents. Sometimes it's because of the kids too. So we have to identify that. Just like every story though, every foster parent and every situation across the state of Maine, everybody has that story. The system wronged me. I get it. I do. There's also two sides to every story. And we cannot come at this with anger. We have to come at this smartly. And we have to come at this with understanding that the system can be better, but we have to work together to find that solution. Your one problem does not trump everybody else's. We have to look towards a solution, one that can work as a blanket for everyone, but we cannot do that through anger.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Karina Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a conversation with Republican candidate for Maine State Representative of District 64, Shawn Packard. So you're running to represent part of Waterville and Winslow. What will your focus be?
A lot of my focus will be on education specifically. I have a small business and I want to inspire youth to stay here in the state of Maine. And that all starts fundamentally with education. I feel like I had a pretty good education through Waterville and part of Winslow through my youth. And I may not have paid attention 100% of the time, but the education was there. And now, partly as a teacher too, I taught first grade for 2.5 years. And I can tell you that our educational system is failing our kids. Kids come into elementary and fourth grade, kids can't even read in the state of Maine. It's like 79% of them can't read. That's a problem. And it does start young. And then if you look at high school kids, I go to vocational schools across the state and I do mock interviews and try to set up opportunities for entrepreneurship and community outreach for these kids. And they can't look me in the eye. They can't give me a handshake. They don't have the confidence in themselves or the passion to do something for themselves. They want a hand out, not a hand up. So looking at the state, if you will, I realize that education is failing our kids. And we've seen what happened with Mississippi. We went from 49th in the country to 9th. And if they can do it, we can do it. So for me personally, partly because I was an educator, but just in general, I think we have to eliminate standardized testing. We have to stop having A, B, C, D choices and realize that the tests that we give out have to be retention based. We still have to have tests, right, to be able to gauge where the kids are. But with retention based tests, we're able to now also look at the teacher. Before, it was just, that kid's failing. There was no accountability for A, B, C, D. They may not even try, and they might still pass. Well, with retention-based testing, if you're talking about Shakespeare, and you have 10 questions on Shakespeare, and they're all fill in the blank, now the kid has to retain the information that was taught. And if 70% of the kids all fail, now it's not the kid's fault. That's a giant portion of the classroom. Now we look at the teacher. And it's not to say, hey, they're fired. No, it's to empower them to say, hey, your teaching method for that part of the curriculum may not have worked. Let's try to work towards something that will allow these kids to retain that information. So it's about working with the kids and the teachers, not singling anybody out and feeling like they aren't smart enough or that they didn't do it right. It's just about guiding them to be able to have a better practice. So that's part one. Part two is, you hear it all the time, especially if you sit on any boards, whether it be a town council board or school board. I want a raise. I work hard. Great. I'm glad you feel like you work hard or you've been there for 50 years or whatever it is. Well, what is that raise actually based on? Just the fact that you teach? Just the fact that you need more supplies in your classroom? What it should be based on is performance. Every JMG teacher across the entire state of Maine is performance-based. They look at the evaluation of their kids and their success rate after the class, and then that is how the teacher is determined to get a raise or not. And I feel like every teacher in the entire state of Maine should be that way. They earn their paychecks based on applying their curriculum to their children in their classroom and trying to match a teaching method that actually produces successful kids. And we look at a few things. We have not only that retention-based teaching, but here's something else I've also talked about. We live in a world of technology, ever-growing technology, okay? And if I am a preschool teacher or even a first grade, second grade, whatever it is, all the way up to high school, if I give you a math problem of 4 plus 5, and I give another kid a math problem, it's all going to be 4 plus 5. But if I put yours with your interests on it, maybe you love fire trucks, maybe you want to be a police officer, maybe you want to be an artist. How hard is it for me to take my math sheet that I'm going to give these kids to work on and allow AI to enhance it with fire trucks or art or whatever it may be? Now the kid has piqued interest in that paperwork and they're more apt to complete it. This thought process can be developed all the way until they're in high school. And we know, I've already heard the arguments. Well, kids are going to change their career path over and over again. Great. Takes 5 seconds to have AI change it over and over again. Doesn't matter if that kid changes every day. You can be there to change with them. That's your job. And all I would ask is that it becomes that standard of care. It's not even a standard operating procedure as much as a standard of care, because the teachers are there to care for these kids and empower them to be the best them. And that way, when they get to be at the end of their road and graduate high school, they already know what they want. And it's not a question. Well, I think I want to do this. They may still change their mind later on. But if you've given them a clear path and an inspiration to be the best them and the best thing that they want to do going forward, they're likely to choose that. They're likely to know that. And they're going to be confident in it. There's 2 things you really can't teach any kid: confidence and passion. And if they have those 2 things, even if they know nothing about a job, as an employer, I would hire them, because I can't teach those 2 things. I can teach them a job all day long, even with 0 experience. But to have somebody walk through the door and confidently shake my hand and look me in the eye, and then to be able to have a passion to grow with that company or said business, that is gold.
Tell us about your family.
I met my wife in school. We got married young. So my wife's name is Marigold. Everybody loves that name. And then we have 2 daughters, Elena and Ikora. They're 8 and 6. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. And they're my world and they keep me going. I wish I had more time to be able to spend with them. Obviously, between work and campaigning, it's a lot, but I know that it's also going to be rewarding and helpful for them too. So I'm laying a foundation, and I may not have grown up with the best childhood myself, but I make sure that my kids have everything that they need in life.
So if somebody wants to get involved in your campaign, what's the best way to do that?
I have quite the social presence, so if possible, check me out on Facebook. It's Shawn M. Packard for State Representative. I think that's probably the first place you'll be able to reach me too. But if you're looking to help support the campaign or get updates, I have a website. It's packardfor64.com. So you can check that out. It has some information on there about the background and my current standings with policies that I'm going to help enact. And then, of course, there's the option to donate on there too if you feel obligated to do so. I'd love to get everybody's support in the Waterville area and the Winslow area come voting time in November.
So what would you want voters to know about you?
Specifically that I am from here. I'm from here, but even more than that, I'm for here. I grew up in a difficult childhood system that may have wronged me, but I want to fix that for kids in the future. I want to stop exporting our most important and valuable resource, which is our kids. And I want to help inspire them to stay here, grow business. Even more than that, though, we need an education system that helps empower our youth so that we don't feel like we have to go to private schools or private entities to get a healthy education. We should be able to trust our local public educators to do so. I also feel like we have quite a homeless and neglect issue and drug abuse issue in the state of Maine. And I feel like I'm best suited to be able to tackle that problem. I've lived some very interesting experiences, but those experiences have set me up for resilience and perseverance, things that I can pass on to policy making. And I've done so at a young age. And I feel like I'm already prepared where most state representatives running don't even know where the bathroom is in the state house. I'm not that representative. I will be the representative that knocks your door. I will be the representative that shows up to every event in town. And more so, I will be the representative that truly represents your voice, gives you a voice, empowers your voice, and allows for the voting process in Augusta to be fair and listen to our constituents and grow a better state of Maine for the next generation. Matter of fact, I've knocked 2,600 doors in the state of Maine already, and I have 4,500 in my district, and I plan to knock every single one multiple times. I was running like I had a primary, and I won't stop there. Even more so, I was the first person in the entire state to have my signatures done, and this is the beginning. It starts here with hard work, as a foundation, and we're going to win this.
Republican candidate for state representative of District 64, Shawn Packard. Thank you so much for being with us today. It was such a pleasure to meet you in person.
Thank you for having me. This is such an honor, and I appreciate all the hard work you've put in.
Thank you very much. You've been listening to Q Point.
Follow us at qpointpodcast.com or on your favorite streaming app.
This is where you can get the news from the people who make the news.
Make sure to join us next time.
We hope you tune in.
Q Point Podcast invites guests and candidates from all parties to join the conversation. The views, information, opinions, and comments expressed during this program do not necessarily represent those of the host, Q Point Podcast, associates, affiliates, and CQRE LLC.
Thanks for being a part of the conversation. The most important voices aren't always the loudest ones. They're the voices of everyday people, raising families, running businesses, serving their towns. That's who we want to hear from. Share your ideas with us online, and let's make sure those voices are never left out. Find us on Facebook or on X or at qpointpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Catch every episode at qpointpodcast.com or wherever you stream. Tune in and tell your friends.